We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.
So you think that you can tell us how to live our lives, never questioning the source from which your moral code derives. You think that suffering is part of some great plan that's been devised. I wonder, what will it take for you to start opening your eyes? I wonder.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. It is May 1st, 2022. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Shannon Q, who I know you're all happier to see than me. How are you, Shannon?
Hi, I'm good. How are you? You great?
I'm antagonistic.
So normal. That's good.
Yeah, it's just normal stuff.
Average.
I'm doing all right, getting good grades. We got a caller ready already.
Oh, I know. Oh my gosh. Are you ready to go already? Let's
do it.
Let's
Who are we
party.
taking?
We're gonna take Larry. Hi, Larry.
Yeah,
You're
hello.
on the Atheist Experience. What would you like to talk about?
Well, it's great to talk with both of you. Shannon, my question is basically directed toward you, considering your expertise. As I told the call screener, I'm an atheist. I've been one about 12 years, I would say. My wife is of over 20 years is still a believer, and one of the things that she does often is speak in tongues. And in my research on the subject, I've tried to find some, especially neuroscientific reasons as to why this type of thing occurs, even why some people utter these sounds. I've been largely unsuccessful in that research. I have on like how the brain has been measured in activity when a person speaks in tongues, but I've never been able to find out just really what causes that to begin with. Are there any scientific studies that you know of that relate to that subject?
Sorry if you hear a dog barking in the background. She must have seen something interesting. Oh goodness.
She's
Sorry
watching
about
the show.
She's watching the show, yeah, and she's speaking in tongues right now. I am gonna have to step away for 1 sec to deal with the dog. So maybe you could talk to Matt for 1 second. I will be right back.
I got you. So
Sure.
I can only talk about it loosely until Shannon gets back. So glossolalia, I had two different friends who experienced glossolalia in two different contexts. One of them had Tourette's and would occasionally say incredibly offensive things. That's the way glossolalia manifest with some people with Tourette's. When it comes to the speaking in tongue version of it, I can't prove that they're faking it, but I suspect consciously or subconsciously they are faking it, because we know that there are people who do fake it. My friend Jerry DeWitt, who's a former Pentecostal preacher, could still, like today, as an atheist, no filling of the Holy Spirit, still speak in tongues just alongside anybody else. The types of tongue speaking that you see in Pentecostal churches, there's no consistent identifiable language to it. Nobody can translate it. They just claim, it's a heavenly language and everything else. And so whether they are intentionally or unintentionally engaging in a deceptive practice or a fraud, the worst case scenario is that people, after engaging in some sort of religious ceremony, will sometimes babble incoherently and then try to claim that it was a heavenly language. It's never, there's no demonstration of that at all. But Shannon knows more about the mental side.
Sorry, the dog should be barking slightly farther away. Sorry about that, guys.
Okay. We have 2 dogs ourselves, and we understand.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. So when it comes to glossolalia, there's some interesting things that I do know about it that you should be able to look up. You may be looking in the wrong place. If you're looking for like what area of the brain causes people to speak in tongues, you're not going to find an area of the brain that does that. You'll find areas of the brain that like generate and understand language, like the Wernicke's and Broca's area, for example, but they're not going to give you any sort of idea of volition, like what causes this. But what I do know about it, which is interesting, is that language sounds that we form are broken down into 2 different components. Those components are called phonemes and morphemes. So phonemes are like the smallest component of any individual language sound, and morphemes are like when you string them together to make some sort of like understandable word. Now, in every instance where you're exposed to glossolalia, so like these like sort of nonsense language babbling sounds, the phonemes that are used are always native to that person's language, which I find utterly fascinating, because what that speaks to is the fact that they're not generating a new unique different language. They're pulling from the frame of reference they already have, and the frame of reference they already have is their known language. So when people start to speak in tongues, they're using all of these little individual sound components that are only found in their native language, even though other native languages to humans all the way across the world have different individual phoneme language components. They're not drawing from them. They're not creating unique phonemes. They're using just different combinations, like nonsense combinations of phonemes that are like existent in their, frame of reference in their neural network when it comes to producing language sounds at all. So what that says is that they're not speaking this like unique created God language. They're just making nonsense sounds from their own language. Because what you would anticipate seeing if it was this like sort of unique divine language, with that those sounds themselves would be unique. They would be comprised in like a discernible pattern as well, so that we would be able to kind of decipher them, and we can't. So there are lots and lots of studies on that. That might be a good place to start. If you're looking to try to figure out what motivates people to do that, I'm sure Matt touched on it. Some people, I think, are just faking it. Some people maybe don't think they're faking it, but they feel this sort of like heavily emotional feeling, and they're conditioned that when they feel this sort of like emotional feeling, to attribute it to like this spiritual presence and then act behaviorally in this manner because they're primed to do so through group conditioning. So if you feel this feeling and consistently end up going whatever, then it can become like a repetitive habit, like a maladaptive habit that's almost becomes an intuitive compulsion. So that might explain some of that.
Okay. I see. I assume both of you have heard people speak in tongues, and usually when my wife, or if I've heard it in a church setting in the past, let's say it's without ever having studied the language officially, it sounds similar to Hebrew, with some of the guttural, and things like that coming through. So yeah, it's very interesting. I appreciate all the information, Shannon. It's been, I definitely don't think she's faking it. She's a very sincere believer, and she's a very emotional believer too. And this is one of her ways of expressing her love towards God, and it's one of the ways that she's very convinced that God exists. And the very few times we have broached the subject, and since my change into atheism, I know I think, Matt, you described said to a caller in the past who was a former Muslim, and he was kind of wrestling with certain issues about how to relate with that not being a relation anymore, or commonality, that the other person was mortified that you now lost your belief. And I think to an extent she has. been mortified with, some of the things I no longer believe that I used to believe with her. But at the same time, it's still very beneficial marriage in so many ways. But I'm also trying to be, of course, true to myself, while at the same time, I'm trying to be truthful and kind, but I'm also trying to be more truthful and kind and just being honest. And the few times that this subject has been broached, one time I did say, I'm just not convinced, dear, that this is from a God. There's another reason for it. And that was hurtful to her, understandably so, especially since I used to be religious. But
I get
I
it.
do appreciate, again, the information. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
I get it. But if somebody's asking you, what you think or why you don't believe, or you've heard me speak in tongues and everything else, someone can be faking something and not necessarily be consciously aware that they're faking. We get into roles and habits. This is the patterns of Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds, the great Charles McKay book, which is one of my favorites to reference. Or you've seen the things where you put some actors on an elevator facing the back wall, and when people get in, they stand normally and face the door like anybody would typically, and then the pressure gets more and more, and people will turn and face the back wall with everybody else that's in the elevator. Given the evidence that we have that glossolalia as a companion to Tourette's or some other mental health issue is clearly different from what happens in church, because we're not saying everybody who walks into a Pentecostal church and speaks in tongues is necessarily mentally ill. They may or may not be, but there's zero demonstration that what they're actually speaking is any possibly translatable language. There's evidence, as Shannon pointed out, that the phonemes and things that they're using come from either their native language or a language that they know, which is why you start to hear things. We learn about, languages, and you can mimic and imitate. I guarantee you, your wife cannot tell you what she's actually saying. And if you recorded her saying something and asked her to define what it was she said, and she did so, you could record her saying the same thing again at another time, and you'd get a different answer. There are ways to go through and demonstrate that this isn't what it appears to be. But at the end of the day, if somebody's just saying, hey, I spoke in tongues, why don't you believe me? You can drop those things as, here's the reasons I'm not convinced. Why is it up to me to disprove your babbling is nothing, or to demonstrate that your babbling is not from a God, instead of it being up to you to demonstrate that it is from God? I get it. It's, spouse and you're not going to push back any more than I'm going to push back on my mom for some things on occasion, but we're not on equal footing here.
Yes.
And when someone is claiming that they're speaking in the tongue of angels, they've adopted a massive burden of proof. And even if they can't prove it to you, how did they reach the conclusion that what they're doing is speaking in an angelic tongue? Isn't it just because somebody told them that's what they're doing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Great points. I really do appreciate all that.
Yeah. Well, it was nice to chat with you. I hope you're having a good rest of your Sunday, and thank you for calling. Bye, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah. I if I could just.
Oh no!
Whoa!
I'm the
If I
worst.
could just.
I did that. I'm so sorry. There was it already had dropped when he came through.
That's
Larry,
all right.
I'm sorry.
Let call back if he needs to add something else on there. That's what happens, though, because there's going to be a delay and we got to move on to callers. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I saw a bunch of stuff going on in chat beforehand. We've got thousands of people watching the show. For those of you who are watching live, down below the chat, there's a donate link. 100% of your donations go directly to the ACA. They don't pass go. Google and YouTube don't collect you $200 or whatever it is. And there's a number of other different ways for you can support us as well. In addition to the donation link beyond the chat, there is ACA merchandise that you can get your grubby little hands on. I'm sorry to tell you, they can correct me. That no, you're done shirt was just for the month of April. I think technically you may still be able to order it today, but don't quote me on that. And if I'm wrong, it's your fault. I've been telling you for a month. I didn't even get one. They're going to have to pull some strings to get me a no, you're done shirt. Because I was busy with an American Atheist Convention. But you can also become a member here on YouTube. for like 99 cents a month. And that will get you out of slow mode on those rare occasions when we have to turn it on. Also get you some custom emoji, as you can see right there. Good stuff across the board. You can go to patreon.com/the Atheist Experience and offer your support that way. And if you just want to engage, and we're thrilled for people who are ready to engage in chat, and especially for people who are going to call in to defend their beliefs, but there's a couple unofficial forums for atheist fans of the organization. One of them is the Atheist Experience fan group, which is at tiny.cc/FBAXP. And the other one is the Atheist Experience private fan group, which is at tiny.cc/FBAXPPR. There's also the unofficial ACA Discord. And unfortunately, this week, neither Shannon and I are going to be able to hang out in the Discord afterwards. But there are people there who are having conversations and engaging and answering questions. So if there's something that you've experienced that you're not sure who else to talk to, stop by the Discord, because there are people there who can point you to other resources. They may point you to Recovering from Religion, Secular Therapy Organization, Grief Beyond Belief, other things like that. But if you're not sure where to turn, it's a decent place to start. And if you have any feedback, questions, criticisms, concerns, anything like that, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. It's down there at the bottom of the screen right now. Make sure you spell atheist correctly. I just watched somebody spell it with ATHIEST, as if I'm atheister than you, but you're the atheist, which I always love that, because I'm atheister than you.
I'm the atheist. All right. Perfect. All right.
Where are we going next, Shannon?
All right. We're going to talk to Rosalind. Hi, Rosalind. You're on the Atheist Experience. What would you like to talk about?
Well, there was a question on the computer, and they asked if well-being was a basis for morality or something like that.
Mhm.
Sure. And
Well,
And?
I don't think it is. Well, I don't. Well, I don't think it is.
What do you think the
Wha-
basis for morality is?
yeah, what should be the basis of morality?
Well, whether or not it harms others.
Isn't harm just another way of talking about well-being?
Huh?
Like if somebody harms you,
Can you
your
repeat
well-being
that?
is in jeopardy, right?
I would say that if you say harm, you're talking about well-being. How is harm not about well-being?
What kind of question is that? I don't get what you're saying.
Okay.
All I know is.
No, let me make this really simple. If you talk about X does harm to someone, is that not the same thing as saying that is damaging their well-being?
Oh boy. Well, atheists, their well-being can just be about anything, okay? It can be
I'm
a
sorry, but
murderer, and if it
Rosalind,
makes them feel,
Rosalind, you're not only not answering my question, but now you're just flat out insulting atheists with some bullshit you pulled right out of your ass. None of us are here advocating for murder. I asked you if you think harm is the foundation for morality, how harm is not the same thing as well-being. And instead of answering, you laugh and insult atheists. Why?
because
Are you incapable of actually having a discussion about morality without trying to trash talk your opposition?
Yeah, you need to be trash talked because you
Bring it. I'm ready. Bring it. Rosalind, Rosalind, what's wrong with me and my worldview right now? Give it to me.
Well, you seem to think that everything goes. If somebody
That's
has
a lie.
biblical
No, Rosalind, I'm going to mute you in about 2 seconds, because you're not going to sit here and fucking lie about me, because people will not believe that you're real. Right now, I guarantee you people watching this show are like, this isn't a real caller. This isn't a real theist. This isn't somebody with real thoughts on morality. It's just a troll calling in to say, oh, atheists think anything goes. I would bet you my entire life savings, if I had any, that you would not be able to find any clip of me advocating for the moral position that you're pretending I hold. which means you've never listened to an atheist. You've never listened to either of us. You've never thought about this. You've never spent a second considering whether or not harm is the same or different from well-being. You have no idea what we value, and you look embarrassingly stupid when we are here advocating for moral positions that are in direct opposition to what your religion allows and encourages, that result in a better world, to pretend like we're advocating for anything goes hedonism and murder. You are embarrassingly ill-informed, and you should be embarrassed to have said that.
No, you should be embarrassed for having this show because it's boring people.
Why should we be embarrassed for having a show? Are you saying that we should be embarrassed because we're atheists? Is that why we should be embarrassed, Rosalind? Because we don't believe the same things that you do?
Or is it because we can have a rational conversation without starting by attacking a fictional position of the person we're talking to?
Well, I just don't like you because you just don't know what you're talking about.
You don't like me because I don't know what I'm talking about. Show me that I don't know what I'm talking about. Show me where I'm actually wrong.
God is responsible for natural disasters happening and drowning children and all that garbage all the time.
Because that's literally in the Bible, Rosalind. That's literally okay.
Do you not think that God in the Bible didn't drown the entire world except for Noah and his family?
No, the water drowned them.
Where'd the water come from, idiot?
Oh, Rosalind.
What is it? It came from
Rosalind,
you are not remotely an honest interlocutor. I refuse to waste more of this show's time with someone as dishonest as you.
I hope you have a glorious day, Rosalind. It was okay.
I hope you have a shit day, but that it gets better.
That was a lot. Okay. All right.
I don't like you because you don't know what you're talking about when you can't answer a single question and just presume that we're a bunch of immoral. All right. Here, let me do more announcements.
Super productive. Okay.
If you, Rosalind, or somebody like Rosalind, or somebody who wants to carry on a conversation with Rosalind, are looking to have those sorts of discussions, you can go to the Atheist versus Theist debates group. There'll be a screen thing up on the screen right now, tiny.cc/XP fan debates. I hope that you find better opponents there, people who will actually discuss the topic without it starting with a personal attack and continuing on and on with personal attacks. Hopefully that's what happens in the Atheist versus Theist debates group. And I know that it's Sunday, and Sunday's the biggest day for atheists, evidently, because we do all of our shows then. And so you probably saw Talk Heathen earlier today. You may have been able to watch Nonprofits, which aired beginning at 3 p.m. in between Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience. New hosts, new segments. I'm told it's a flagship operation or flagship show of the Atheist Community of Austin. And you can find all of this stuff by going to tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. That is your one-stop destination for all of our shows as audio-only podcasts. So if you're familiar with AXP, but you aren't familiar with the other programs, or maybe you want to see other hosts, you want to tune into Secular Sexuality, find out stuff about sex, and listen to Christy and other people who know what the hell they're talking about, engage on those subjects. Or maybe on Friday nights, you want to tune in and watch yourself some Truth Wanted. Maybe you'll find that Dan is much nicer than me when talking about harm and well-being when it comes to morality. And he might be willing to take slightly more bullshit from people before calling them out. I don't think so, though, but he might be. In any case, the reason we have all this is because of the wonderful crew who's working behind the scenes. And I guarantee you some of them are probably giggling at this particular point. And the other ones are working. So show yourselves, because these are the individuals who are screening your calls, who are handling the audio, who are handling the video. Look there, Lamb of God t-shirt. Wow, we're throwing down today. What's up, buddy? And in addition to those people, there's also moderators in chat and call screeners and people taking notes so that it's much easier for us to clip. The production side of ACA Productions is huge, and I am overwhelmed, stunned, and impressed every single day I show up to all of these volunteers, including Shannon and myself, just volunteers here, who would love to have better conversations than "I hate you because you're wrong." That's not that impressive of a conversation.
No. The water drowned the babies. That one's going to sit with me for a bit. All right, let's take another call. Let's talk to Anthony. Hi, Anthony. You're on the Atheist Experience. What would you like to talk about today?
Hey, Shannon. Hey, Matt. I wanted to make the argument that biblical inerrancy is not necessary for Christianity to be true.
I
Okay.
agree with you.
Me too.
So-
Good talk.
Thanks. You know what is necessary for Christianity to be recognizable as true?
What is that?
Sufficient evidence to justify its claims about gods and the supernatural. Doesn't have to be inerrant. There can be errors in the book. But what needs to be true is that Jesus needed to exist, needed to be God incarnate, needed to die and be resurrected. Those things that are real tenets of Christianity, those things have to be demonstrable. And unfortunately, unless I've missed something, that's not the case. So I agree with you that biblical inerrancy isn't a requirement for Christianity to be true.
Same.
Well, I would almost argue that even if the stuff about the deity of Christ and the resurrection, I would argue maybe not even those things need to be true, because that's
come on.
Of
Come on.
Well,
Really? For Christianity to be true, you could take the Christ out of Christianity, then it would just be anity. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Christ isn't a name, it's a title. You are removing all of the critical aspects of Christianity. Now, granted, this is a former Southern Baptist talking. But when Paul says, if Christ be not raised, then our faith is in vain, you're saying, well, maybe it doesn't have to be true that Jesus existed and was resurrected and Christianity is still true. No, I'm sorry. I'm not keen on saying no true Christian, because technically I don't get to define what is or isn't a true Christian. But if you're going to come up with a version of Christianity that is so far out of orthodoxy that it removes the deity of Christ, I would prefer, rather than sitting here talking to us atheists about it, that you go get some Christian theologians and scholars and convince them of that position, and then come back and say, I've got a bucket load of apologists who don't think it's necessary for Jesus to have actually been raised from the dead for Christianity to be true. Because they're just making shit up at that point.
Okay, that makes sense. But the reason I wanted to call in is because I often see atheists make this point that, if they can find one little mistake in the Bible, then all of Christianity, there's no reason to embrace.
Have you seen either of us make those points?
Have either of us done that?
Because you're calling in to speak directly to the two of us.
Okay, I can't say I think either of you has done that, but it definitely is something that occurs within the atheist community. That
there's a lot of stupid atheists with bad arguments, just like there's a lot of stupid Christians with bad arguments. For example, I don't know if you were listening, but somebody called in to tell us that well-being isn't a good foundation for morality, but harm is, and then couldn't tell us what the difference was between harm and well-being, and then just said that they hated us because we're wrong. I don't think that represents you or any serious component of Christian thought or theistic thought. But I'm not going to go calling up William Lane Craig's podcast to tell him how I heard this woman say that atheists are stupid and want to drown babies. So have you got something for us that's relevant to us?
Well, I want to present a version of Christianity that I think atheists can accept. I think for Christianity to be true, and I'm not going to take that much more of your time. I understand your point, but for Christianity to be true, really, there has to have been a real Jesus Christ human being with real disciples. And he really did have to teach them some kind of moral philosophy, and then they spread his teachings. Now, we may never be able to know what the truth of what he actually did and taught were, but I think as long as that foundation is there.
So you're just saying that a cult could be formed. Like, that's literally all you're saying. Like, we know Mormonism exists. We know Jehovah's Witnesses exist. We know there's myriad other cults that exist. So all you're saying to me right now, you're not in any way proving that it's true. You're almost proving our point, which is just that even if Jesus did exist and was some sort of apocalyptic preacher roaming around and managed to get followers, that doesn't mean that anything that he said was true. So you're just making an argument for Christianity existing without a God, which is what, okay.
Yeah. The same argument you just presented for Christianity to be true, with only changing subjects, not actual content, could be true for virtually any religion. So anytime
Right.
there was a real person with real followers who taught them a message that they spread, that religion is true according to your model. Would you like to
Scientology
rework your
wins.
model?
So
You-
L. Ron Hubbard got it right.
You're right, but you realize mythicism has really taken root over the last few decades or so.
We're not mythicists.
Anthony, neither of us
are mythicists.
are mythicists. And that's a Tukokay fallacy, because after you make a case for Christianity that we point out is incredibly flawed, you tell us you're right, but mythicism has taken hold. What the fuck does that have to do with us? Just own the fact that you had a shit definition of Christianity, it got pointed out, and correct it and move on.
All right. Well, okay. I'm glad you're not a mythicist. Maybe you could do more to combat that. I think it's
Maybe
Why
you
on
could do
earth
more
would
to
I?
think fucking clearly and acknowledge when you've made a mistake.
So you're using this as a platform so that you can like air your grievances with every atheist who's ever like made you upset on the internet, is what it seems like.
Boo-hoo.
And instead of actually having a conversation with the two of us about what you believe and why, you're using us as foils so that you can say, well, maybe you should pick up this cross that I've decided I'm going to bear and go attack people who believe different things than you that are also atheists. I'm not sure why I would do that. Some mythicists actually do make good points. Like there's some interesting history surrounding mythicism, and it's an interesting thing to discuss. So why on earth would I go and attack them? Why wouldn't I have a good conversation with them about the things that they believe in why, which is what we're attempting to do with you, but it seems to be very difficult because you're just goalpost shifting so that you can pick another group of atheists that you don't like and then rail on us about how you don't like them.
Meanwhile, in addition to that, I've engaged with mythicists. I've had my mythicist friends, both Richard Carrier and David Fitzgerald, on my various shows. We've had discussions about it. I moderated a debate between Bart Ehrman and Robert Price. I've engaged on this subject many, many times, and I've been clear that I'm not a mythicist, though my position is really simple, and that is Christians cannot demonstrate reliably that Jesus even existed. That doesn't mean he was a myth, but it means they can't even meet that little burden of proof. But what I would want to know, Anthony, is why is it when you present here's how Christianity could be true, and we agree, you move on to here's how Christianity could be true, even though none of it's true. And when we point out the fallacies in it, the flaw in it, you say that we're right, and then you just change the subject to something else that neither of us are responsible for. Are you capable of acknowledging when you've made a shitty argument and trying to correct it and move on? Or did you just call in to try to trash talk people you don't like, which is what Shannon presumes?
No, I called in to speak. I know there's a large percent, maybe not you two, but a large percentage of the atheist community has bought into the notion that if the Bible has
Okay,
errors,
I'm literally hanging up on you right now if Shannon doesn't do it first, because I didn't ask you to tell us about a large portion of the atheist community that you seem to have a fucking problem with. I asked if you were capable of owning up to your mistakes, or if you just wanted to trash talk, and you answered that by immediately trying to talk about a segment of the atheist population. So piss off, Anthony. I have no interest in talking to you.
Yeah, that's kind of frustrating. He just called and say, you guys seem okay. However, I would like to use your platform to just trash talk other people who aren't here to defend themselves.
Yeah. Hey, Anthony, I don't even know what version of theism you are, but how would you like it if I called you up and said, why aren't you railing against the criminal organization that is the Catholic Church that shovels pederast priests around from parish to parish so that they don't have to face criminal prosecution? Oh, wait, you're not Catholic, you're Lutheran? Oh, well, that doesn't matter. It's still worth it. Why aren't you challenging them? I mean, it's ridiculous.
That's
Anthony.
actually a better point. That's actually a better point, though, Matt, because that's demonstrably causing harm in society. Mythicists
And it's true.
saying that they don't think that Jesus ever existed as a historical person is an interesting thought experiment to me and harms no one.
Yes.
So
Bummer.
they're not even analogous. Like your point is actually a valid one that could be brought
I'm
up.
really sorry, Anthony,
Like, go
that
get the
atheists seem
Thomists,
to...
Anthony. Go tell the Thomists that they're wrong. I'm going to call every podcast and be like, you know what? Talk to the Calvinists and tell them the tulip is stupid. There's too many Calvinists. What are you going to do about that? That's ridiculous. Anyway.
I'm sorry that so many atheists think circles around you, Anthony. It's rough.
Okay. Oh, all right. We're gonna talk to Mark because
Well,
this is. Oh, well. Oh,
go ahead. Go
We'll
ahead. We'll
return
take
him to
Mark.
the. We'll return. I return him to the queue, and then we'll
Okay.
talk to him. I got overzealous.
In that case, even though it's early on the actual time thing, I like doing it at this point. And that is, I already mentioned all the other wonderful shows that the Atheist Community of Austin produces. You can go to the AEN podcast thing to catch any of them and watch them. But if you haven't been keeping up, like if you've been traveling or going to conventions or doing other stuff, and maybe you didn't get a chance to watch Secular Sexuality or Truth Wanted this week, as is usual, we've put together this clip to let you know what you might have missed.
Should we talk about history in schools? You know, controversial topics.
Yeah, right.
Hey, white people did a lot of really like messed up shit. Should we tell the kids?
Like a rigging set up in a few of the rooms, so like his the chandelier in a room would move on its own.
What?
And he had like
What
a
the
couple other things. Yep.
What the kind of Scooby-Doo ass bullshit is this? Was he trying to like rob the local town and pretend he was a ghost?
I don't know. Like Ollie and Alex Jones go together like eggs and bacon, like, you know, full of cholesterol and might give you a heart attack. That's just kind of how.
We'll give it a
Ish.
couple minutes here because apparently the theists are, you know, there's this sort of shrinkage that has happened with the confidence of the theists of
That
late.
happens in nature.
So-
It's cold outside.
Hey, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God who died for our sins and was resurrected on the third day because the Bible says so. Well, that's, you know, cool story, bro. But because the Bible says so, doesn't get us any closer to the truth.
God cares for the flowers and the birds, and he makes sure that they are fed and clothed and all this other stuff. No, what is it? Do not worry.
I'll tell you from memory, do not be anxious about anything, but through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. I've read the book, guy.
And we're back. And Shannon, we got another caller that we that you want to bring in there. So
I returned Mark to the queue. I'm going to take Mark back out of the queue.
Awesome.
Sorry about doing that to you,
bring
Mark.
Mark forth. I summon
you-
Mark.
Come forth, Mark, and speak to us, atheists. What would you like to talk about today, Mark?
I love being with my people.
I'm not convinced we're your people yet.
We'll find out. What's up?
I feel that, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as atheism goes, I'm a 10. And what my point that brings me to you is, and I've brought this up before in other shows, is that I often feel that, like, it's not that I'm an atheist because you haven't shown me any evidence. I believe there's no God. It just simply is a reality for me. And I believe that, you know, many of the people who are on these shows believe the same thing. And yet we tolerate a world where people are, you know, gathering every Sunday or Friday or whenever their holy day is, and they're speaking to no one. And in any other context, this would be considered,
don't do it,
having a mental illness.
And you did it.
And you
did
fucking did it. All right. I'm going to start because I'm going to bow out incredibly quickly. First of all, you said literally, we tolerate a world where people are gathering and speaking to no one. Yes, that's called freedom. They're free to do that. They're free to exercise their religious liberties. But then you went the step further. And by the way, the note from the call screener says, quote, time for AXP to call out these stupid callers for suffering from mental illness. And on that note, Shannon?
I really believe that we absolutely, objectively, abjectly, and with like impunity need to call out people who say the types of things that you just said for various reasons. One is that you in this call are assessing yourself, it seems, as superior intellectually and utilizing that position and saying basically that people who have mental illnesses or are neurodiverse are less intellectually than you or have some sort of problem. You're using it as a pejorative. A, that's not the case. And B, that's reprehensible as far as I'm concerned. It further stigmatizes mental illness, and it does not need to be stigmatized further than it already is. Secondly, you're just objectively incorrect. Like from a clinical perspective, like if you study the field at all, you are objectively incorrect. It is not a mental illness. You could classify it as some sort of crowd conformity. You could classify it as some sort of indoctrination. There's myriad other ways that you could look at the phenomenon of religiosity. None of them fit whatsoever into the paradigm of what anybody who is worth their salt as a clinician would classify as mental illness. It is the most shallow way to look at this, and it is just ridiculous. It borders on repugnant, really, to be honest with you.
Because I think it's crossed that line.
You're saying it's akin to saying I am of superior intellect and quality, and people who do not believe the same types of things that I believe are somehow deficient. And you know who else is deficient? People with mental illnesses. So let's just draw some lines, and we just won't even talk to them. We'll shun those people. That is just, why on earth do you feel as though that's a position that is viable and worth holding?
Number one, you're a brilliant woman, but in no way, shape, or form did I say that I was intellectually superior to anyone. I'm like, I didn't
say you said that. I said that is what you're portraying.
I thought I was smarter than everyone else, and trust me, I'm not smarter than anyone else.
We know that.
What are you saying then? Because that is what you portray when you say these types of things. I'm not saying you explicitly said them, but that is what you portray when you say something like this.
So well, let me ask you, do you believe there's a God?
No.
No.
Did I? Yes.
No.
Did I suddenly cure myself of a mental illness the moment I realized I was wrong? Also, no.
So let me ask you this real quick, Mark. Mark, shut up and listen to me. If you ran across someone who is mentally ill and delusional, what's your perspective on that person?
Well, it depends on how it manifests itself.
Should they be mocked?
There are a lot of people who like to have,
should they be mocked or belittled for their mental illness?
Well, certainly not. But when we're having
good, then why are you doing that? Why are you setting up mental illness as a pejorative and then calling the callers stupid and saying that we need to call them out for mental illness when, as Shannon pointed out, and as I pointed out countless times, what they're engaged in is not in any way mental illness. So you are factually wrong, and yet you are using mental illness as a way to disparage someone, even though you're acknowledging that you shouldn't even be disparaging them if they were mentally ill. So you're like wrong at every possible turn here.
Well, you said that I called Shannon stupid.
No, we didn't say that. We said that you were portraying a position of intellectual superiority by referring to the callers as stupid and trying to diminish them as if they're mentally ill. I'm sorry. Shut the fuck up. I'm sorry that you don't understand our words any more than you understand mental illness. But when Shannon called you out for portraying yourself as intellectually superior, that was an honest assessment of both what you told the call screener and what you started with on here.
So you're pretty good with people all over the place that in any other context would be questioned if you spoke to someone.
They wouldn't, though. Okay,
Mark,
I'm going to try to calm this down. Can I calm this down for a second?
Yeah, because I'm going to hang up on him for refusing to acknowledge what we said and instead going on to claiming that we're good with people doing stuff. So I'll shut up. Shannon, go ahead. I'm
going to calm this down for a second. First, I didn't say that you were explicitly stating that. And if I didn't, and if I portrayed it as, or if you received what I said as me saying you explicitly did, you didn't. So I will acknowledge that and apologize in the spirit of fairness. I was attempting to say that is the type of thing that you portray. Now, whether or not I am okay with people believing, of course, I'm okay with people believing. I am not the arbiter of what people can and can't believe. Would I rather people believe more true things? Yes, absolutely. That's why I'm here today and why I constantly show up and volunteer, because I believe that that being an atheist is the position that holds the truth value. That's why I do this. Now, when you say, are you okay with people? Yes, of course I am. Why would I not be? Why is it? And that does not in any way relate to the context of this call, which is you saying that people calling in with different beliefs than you are the same as people being mentally ill. Why do you draw that line and think it's okay?
Well, I guess it's because in any other context, if you were speaking to someone that you knew wasn't there, it would be viewed in another way. But there's this carve out for religion.
There's a reason there's a carve out for religion. And would you like to hear what the actual reason is?
That I'm smarter than anyone else. I called for a conversation.
I'm attempting to have a conversation with you right now. So this is fair. And I've already addressed that and said that that is what you are portraying when you say these types of things, and that you didn't explicitly say it. That's how I was receiving it. So we've already addressed that. Now, when you're talking about people talking to somebody, okay, when you're talking about people talking to somebody who isn't there, the line that you're drawing, I'm assuming you're drawing, is that you think that they're having some sort of delusion. Now, that's just explicitly not the case. It can be a multitude of other things. One of the things that it could be is conditioning, where people believe that someone's there. They don't believe that they're getting a response, but because they believe in a deity, they think that they're sending a message to someone that is there. That is not a delusion. That is conditioning, possibly indoctrination, and just a byproduct of belief. When people do believe that their own internal monologue could be attributed to God, that is another thing. That's also conditioning. That is not a mental illness, and it is not a delusion. That is just the human condition. The human condition is that we can be compelled to believe in things that aren't true, and in fact are incredibly prone to it, and as a result can engage in behaviors that align with that belief system. That is not, and never has been, and will never be mental illness. So when people call in or go on the internet or go in front of other people and say that it is, they are uninformed clinically, and they are using it as a pejorative. Like, how would you treat a delusion versus how you would treat a belief in God? Like, what's the pathology?
Our country is based. These people go out and vote to take away women's rights, to take away, voter.
I agree with that, but that's not because. So you're saying that people who are mentally ill don't vote the way that they should? So that's a byproduct of mental illness, is what you're saying, right? So people who are mentally ill aren't capable of doing that. Like, what line are you drawing here?
Well,
why do you need to classify them as mentally ill? That's different. For Christians vote that way because they're indoctrinated and they're conforming to their group. They're tribal, like most of us are. That's another part of human nature. And they believe that they are right, and they are reinforced by the society at large around them and their in-group. So they act accordingly. That is just what you would expect to see psychologically, given the circumstances that they were in. Calling them mentally ill doesn't change anything about that.
I have a question for you, Mark.
Certainly.
Can you prove there is no God?
That's not up to me. Can you prove there is?
No. The question is, can you prove there is no God? Because you are looking at people and saying, I don't believe that what you believe is real, and then concluding that because of that, they're engaged in a delusion and have some mental illness. You can't. I asked you if you can prove that their God is not real. And did you say no?
That.
Did you say no?
if I did, then I
Can
misspoke
you
quickly.
prove that their God is not real?
I believe that I can.
I don't give a fuck what you believe. I said, can you prove that their God is not real?
Yes.
Okay, do
Because
it.
every definition.
No. Here, we're going. Put a minute on the clock. I got my fucking Jesus hat on. You got a minute on the clock to prove that the Christian God that I believed in is not real. Because my position is that God is not falsifiable, which means you couldn't possibly do this. Go. Prove it.
If you are real God, strike me down now.
You're a fucking idiot. That's not proof.
You've given me, like, a paradox.
That's not proof.
I can't possibly. I'm just having an exchange with you.
No, you're not. No, you're not. You're shitting on the mentally ill, and you're shitting on representations of the mentally ill, and then you are shitting on religious people. And your model only makes sense if, in fact, you are right that their God does not exist. If you can't prove it, shut the fuck up about it, because you're wrong about mental illness. You're wrong about the falsifiability of their God. Why can't you stop being wrong?
Why don't you prove their God to me?
It's not up to me to prove somebody else's God. Any other stupid things you want to say?
Mark, I just want you to stop doing it, please. Like it's just I'm trying, like, to Matt's point, like, you can't prove it. People are going to believe in things that we really ardently believe are incorrect, right? That's why we do what we do. Maybe this is what we do is probably a little bit more productive than what you're doing right now, which is saying that dialogue should stop because you believe these people to be mentally ill. I get fired up about stuff like this because I think that being a mental health advocate is significantly more needed. So perhaps my tone could be a little bit better, but I would really ardently like you to reevaluate your position on this and stop doing it. It's not correct. It's not good. It's not beneficial. And I don't even believe that it's a step towards what your stated goals were, which is stopping people from voting against things like women's rights. Because just calling people mentally ill and then disengaging is not going to change anybody's mind.
I don't think that I was belligerent, but I think I was met with belligerence.
Cry me a fucking river. You shit on mental health issues. You shit on mental illness. You shit on religious people and accuse them of something that is not true and that you can't prove. I'm sorry that you were met with belligerence. Some of us were religious. We didn't recover from a mental illness. Some of us have friends and family who are religious. They're not suffering from mental illness. Shannon tried desperately and thoroughly to explain to you how you are just factually wrong about mental illness, but you won't hear it. And I asked you if you could disprove their God, which is a requirement for you to conclude that they are in fact delusional, and you couldn't do that either. So I'm sorry that you feel that you were met with belligerence. Maybe if you hadn't started with an attack on the mentally ill, you might not have been.
Well, I wanted to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, good job getting that ball rolling. Now, go put it on a gag so that you stop talking.
Mark, can you just agree to that it's not a good idea to do it? Like, can I get that from you? That you should stop equating belief in a deity of any form with mental illness?
That is it. I was mistreated. And I just, you could have told me I was wrong in much different ways. But
go fuck yourself.
So you're focusing on the tone in which you received the message. And I hear that. I absolutely hear that. I understand. I understand you're focusing on the tone in which you heard the message, but the reason that there was tone when you heard that message is because that message that you were attempting to send is intensely impactful to people in real life if we continue to propagate stigmas, and that's important to quash whenever we hear it. And that's what you were attempting to deliver to us. So we wanted to stop it in its tracks. So that's the reason that you were met with that type of tone. Okay?
Well, in the name of rhetoric, I think there's a better way to, disagree with the person.
Did I ask you for your thoughts on better ways of disagreeing with people? Did either of us? Because if the rest of this call is just going to be you lecturing us on how much you didn't like how you were responded to, there are other calls waiting. Either answer Shannon's question or we're just going to move on.
Good day, sir. And I wish you every success in life.
Okay.
I hope you have a good rest of your day and enjoy the rest of Sunday, Mark. And my dog behind me also wishes you a good day.
And in keeping with the past, I don't, but I hope it gets better tomorrow.
Fair enough. All right. Are you ready for another call, my friends?
Yes.
Okay. We are going to talk to Jay. All right, Jay. Hi, Jay. You're on the Atheist Experience. What would you like to talk about?
I just want to make a quick statement. You guys sound like the typical angry atheist, Hey, just have a conversation.
We were just talking to another atheist, actually, that we were angry because of what we were having a discussion about. Do you have a question or something you would like to discuss, or are you calling in just to disparage us?
I got a question. I'm sort of the opposite of them, though. It's so crazy. I think atheists are the people with the mental illness and the Dillahunty, right?
Oh, you're not going to like my tone either then, Jay. So we're not mentally ill.
You guys were considered mentally ill, correct?
I can't hear what you're cutting out on me. I don't know if it's just me. Matt, can you hear him?
I think he said we were mentally ill. I'm sorry, Jay, did you say that we were...
Before this, the new era, I guess you could say, that's what it was. Atheists and homosexuals.
And what version of the DSM? And what version of the DSM was atheist or mental illness? And what were the criteria?
Are you disagreeing with me?
She's asking a question. Is that too hard to understand?
In what version of the DSM was atheism considered a mental illness? And what were the criteria that needed to be met?
Yeah, I'm not here to talk about you got me there just like I'll get you on the Bible. You know what I mean? So,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you can't support your assertion.
So
you were just saying stuff.
You want to make a claim that you then can't support, and you think you're going to do better when it comes to the Bible? Why should anybody give a fuck about what the Bible says?
I think that's pretty common sense that in the 50s and 60s, before the that's what it was considered.
I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry for your confusion, Jay, but facts don't care about what you think is common sense. You can either make the case with facts or not. But if you're just going to say it's your opinion, then in the 50s, atheist was determined to be a mental illness, which, by the way, is irrelevant to whether or not it is, which is why Shannon was asking you which version of the DSM and what were the criteria, because the criteria that's the important part of it. So would you like to move on to schooling us on the Bible, or are we just going to drop this whole thing where you're going to make assertions that you can't back up?
Well, I can ask you one more question. Is your hate for God, do you think that's a reason for you not to believe in God and not to see that we don't come from monkeys?
No, I don't. I don't hate God, and we are still monkeys. We also came from monkeys. My disbelief in God. See, I was a Southern Baptist fundamentalist Christian who was studying with the intent of becoming a preacher. I didn't begin to hate God and then disbelieve. I began to disbelieve, and then I found out that the God character and the things that are in the Bible are grossly immoral, and they are not worthy of belief or respect.
Can I ask you? This is serious. Was it before you turned homosexual, or was it after you turned?
I'm not a homosexual, but even if I were, I wouldn't give a shit.
And I was born queer, so
yeah,
it would have been after because that happened when I was born. I was born this way.
Do you have any serious questions, or do you just try to throw homosexual in as an insult to see if you could shock us?
I'm not trying to insult you.
Bullshit.
Just asking you a question.
No, you're full of shit.
No, sir.
You're full of shit because you asked about it. Did I stop believing? Was it before or after I was a homosexual? And I'm not a homosexual. So clearly you're not being serious, which means I'm just going to keep trolling you for as long as you stay on the line.
You had a question for
What?
me that wasn't going
I
to
have a-
insult me. I'm curious what the question is. Let's see if I
mean,
can take
if
it.
things are going to assault you, how do I know what's going to assault you and what's not going to assault you? I mean,
Well,
is it
clearly you
liberal-
failed to find what would actually insult me, but why on earth would you accuse me of being a homosexual when I'm not?
Oh, I just thought we're just you when you pictures of and you just don't.
I'm sorry, your
I don't
phone's
know,
breaking up.
I just-
Your phone's breaking up, and we didn't hear that. So why would you call me a homosexual?
I just thought you were. I thought you said you were
Why?
before on the show. I apologize.
Well, it's not an
Why?
apology.
I don't
It
know.
wouldn't
You sort of
bother
look
me.
like
I
a
would be happy.
homosexual,
I would be very happy to be gay. But what you've shown is you don't know who you're talking to, and so you ask questions. Like, for example, the question you asked: did I stop believing before or after I was gay? Let's assume for a second that I was gay and that I stopped believing before I was gay. Would that make any difference? No. Let's assume I'm gay and I stopped believing after I knew I was gay. Would that make any difference? No. So your question is irrelevant and was
Yeah.
just a way to try to sensationalize a topic. And you were factually wrong, just like you were about atheism and the DSM. So what is it that you're really going to school us on? Because if you're ready to go with the Bible, I'm ready, bro. Bring it.
Well, there's not too many homosexuals that believe in the Bible. You know what I mean? Because they are.
There's
just
loads.
Because they're
There's
homosexual.
loads of them. There's entire churches that are queer friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there's
let me ask you,
tells you-
Jay, is there any subject that you actually know something about that's factually accurate? Because so far you're batting zero.
Yeah, I know that we don't come from monkeys, and I know that you don't know
You're wrong.
what we come from, right? What do we
You
come
are
from?
wrong. You are wrong
What
about
is the origin of life? What is the origin of life?
the origin of life is irrelevant to
come
whether or
from
not we. The origin of life
No,
is irrelevant
actually,
to whether.
you just asked
Would you
me what
shut the
what
fuck
do I
up and
know?
listen to me, Jay? I'm answering your question, and then you won't be as ignorant as you were before.
I feel like we're talking to an evangelical Christian meme generator.
Yeah.
That's what it
So,
feels like right now.
The origin of life, the subject of abiogenesis, is separate from evolution, which is what happens after there's life. And so no matter how life started, it is an observed, verifiable fact that speciation occurs and that we share DNA and common ancestry with every other living thing, and that we share close ancestry with other primates. These are established facts.
Tell me which one is it then? Tell me which one was where are they at? Give me the proof.
Which
That's all I
one
want.
is what?
Yeah,
I just asked you. Well, give me the proof.
The proof of
endogenous
what?
retroviruses. Are you talking about evolution, like human evolution? Endogenous retroviruses.
I'm
would probably
talking about
be
the
and
monkeys.
chromosome
The
2.
monkeys we come from.
Endogenous
it's-
retroviruses and chromosome 2.
Endogenous retroviruses, as Shannon's saying, but also chromosome 2 is
Retroviruses are always retroviruses. They've never been turned into any other fish or monkey or anything like that, right?
Oh my
I said
God.
endogenous retro.
You are just amazingly stupid about science. And we're sitting here and we have one person who's trying to answer you with a science question and a science answer, and another person who's addressing the fact that for example, the Catholic Church accepts evolution. There are plenty of Christians who accept evolution.
Yeah.
In the Dover trial, there was a Christian who argued on behalf of chromosome 2 fusing, demonstrating common ancestry with other primates. I'm sorry that you haven't bothered to look into this, but at the end of the day, even if you were correct and evolution by natural selection did not occur, that does not mean that we are in any way closer to the bullshit God you believe in being reasonable or true. So what are you going to school us on next?
Oh, well, how about this? That your Nebraska man was a fake. Your Piltdown man was a fake. Your Java
How did
man
we
was a
find out?
fake. They were all fake.
How?
And you know
No,
that.
they weren't. No, sir, they weren't all fakes. But the fact that there were fakes.
Yes, they were all fakes. And you know that.
Would you let me finish? How did we find out that Piltdown Man was a fake? Was it religion or science that did that?
It was good creationist scientists that know what they're talking about.
You
not
lying
atheist
coward.
science.
Let's get somebody else. It wasn't creationist. It was science, not religion, that demonstrated the problems with flaw. Anyway, it's
All right, Jay, have a lovely day. We'll talk to you later. Enjoy your Sunday. Goodbye.
we proved fraud in the scientific community. by doing better science, not by doing better religion.
I'm just a little bit floored that he thought that when I said indulge, it's okay, it's fine. I'm just gonna move on. I'm just gonna let that one go fly right
And
past.
evidently, I'm gay, and I don't know when it happened, but
I know I'm the gay one.
it's
He
so
picked the
weird
wrong
because
pony.
I mean,
I'm the queer one.
it's not like it wouldn't bother me to be gay. It would be disappointing if I were gay because, then I'd have to tell my girlfriend that I was gay. But
Yeah, okay, okie dokie. All right, next caller. Let's talk to Gary. Hi, Gary. You are on the
Hi,
Atheist
is this me, Gary,
Experience.
Connecticut?
Oh,
Yep.
Hi, Gary.
You're ready.
Hi,
You're
I got
on
it.
the line.
Hi, I got to say it's. Thank you. There seems to be a little delay, maybe, but I got to say, if you guys ever want to release a blooper reel, I think only maybe people on the line on hold can hear the other end of the callers, but it's borderline abuse. I mean, some of these people just are fired up, but I really appreciate you guys running the show. Matt, I kind of arrived at your show by going through the YouTube rabbit hole, and I came across Matt's conversation, or I don't know if it was a conversation or debate even, with Ray Comfort. Matt, I'm sure you're aware and probably remember, and the Ray Comfort.
It's happened a few times, so I don't know which one, but go ahead and we're fine.
Well, yeah, fair enough. It seems like Ray, in all the conversations, it was a point of contention with you, and I think rightfully so. He kept making the claim that you were never a real Christian, or that you never knew the Lord or had the real Christian faith, born-again experience. And I thought that was outrageous, because I thought, well, if Matt, because I want to get your case straight to me. It must be weird to have people call and talk about your life, like what you shared previously. But from what I understand about you, Matt, you were born into a Baptist family, grew up in the church and remained faithful, and then sought out to prove to a roommate or somebody that you're, that Christianity was correct, and that through that you arrived at conclusions that you hold at today. Is that? I don't want to mischaracterize you, but is that accurate so far? Do I got you down?
That's close enough to accurate. I mean, I don't. That was many years ago,
Okay.
and some of my positions have changed or varied a little bit. But yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's my point too. Is that so? Ray at one point was not a Christian, and he claims later on he was. You were a Christian, and then later claimed that you were not. So I don't understand why those two experiences can't both be, interchangeable and true for both people. And that's where my question kind of comes from, is that
because truth isn't personal. You don't have your truth and then other things. The claims are either true or they're not. And so Mormons, Methodists, and Muslims can all claim personal experience of a God. All of those things would be in conflict with one another. They cannot all be true, but they can all be false. And so my personal experiences that I would have used to cite why I was a Christian, I found out that those are flawed. And my atheism is not the result of personal experience. So they're not even the same claim. Ray claiming to be a Christian because of personal experience is, I don't claim to be an atheist because of personal experience. I'm an atheist because Christianity has not met its burden of proof, and theism has not met its burden of proof. That's it.
Okay, all right. Maybe, and I don't mean to be semantic, but this is, I hope you roll with me a little, because I love this stuff. It's philosophy stuff. So the experience, so you're saying that you're atheist because Christianity has not met the burden of proof. That I agree. Okay. I can see a point there. But the way I see it is okay, the experience then would be like a trial in which evidence for Christianity was brought forth. Does that make sense? And then
no, it doesn't make sense, because if we convict someone of murder because we presented evidence, it would be a mistake to claim that trial was just personal experience, that the reason for convicting someone of murder was personal experience. If in fact we pointed to physical data, yes, someone will experience the trial, but it's not that experience of the trial that is the reason behind a murder conviction.
But without the trial, there'd be no conviction. In other words,
But that's not relevant to whether or not the conviction is the result of personal experience. It's not. The conviction is the result of evaluating the factual evidence presented.
And furthermore, you could have the experience of the trial. The person could be guilty and not convicted.
Yeah.
Right? The outcome isn't always necessarily going to be something that supports the underlying truth claim. It all depends on the quality of the evidence that's presented, what the outcome is, and how you deliberate.
If you're going to try to equate two things, they need to be comparable and directly analogous. And so if you want to say, oh, I believe because of personal experience, but my personal experience is a reasoned consideration of the available evidence and finding that it's unconvincing, now you've redefined a personal experience such that anything that happens is in fact a personal experience. And so there is no more any data. There is no more any reasonable discourse, because if I say, here's the case for why the sky is blue, and I go through and I described optics and refraction and all of these things, at no point am I pointing to personal experience. But when you say, but you've seen light and you thought those thoughts, and those are personal experiences, and therefore you were convinced by personal experience, you are just factually wrong. You are confusing the map for the place.
Okay, I roll with your analogy, and I'm going to just sort of respond and just maybe just offer up this as a thought. I saw this on a bumper sticker once. It stuck with me. It says,
"Oh, it's probably great.
Spirituality is for those of us who have been there." Again, spirituality is for those of us who have been there, and I think I sort of identify with that because it's like I've had personal experiences, and I understand that you said that you also have, when you were a believer, sort of felt things or whatever, but that later on. Okay, so yes, okay. So, gosh, I mean, I understand that you're just like, I respect you for this, Matt and Shannon, that you guys are just ferocious pursuers of truth.
As we get ready to queue up the next caller, I wanted to point out that, a bumper sticker like spiritualities for those of us who've been there, that sort of mentality of the you had to be there is basically an admission that I can't demonstrate the truth of this to anybody else. You must have been there, which means it's purely from experience. Spirituality is a word that means so many different things to so many different people that I find the term actually useless. And if the caller, hadn't been a dipshit, we could maybe have had a conversation about what he means by spirituality.
That was the best conversation so far, too. That's
I know it was cool. We got stuff, but I get it. Some people aren't real, and some people aren't serious and honest in interlocutors. But it's worth it because he referenced a bumper sticker and a bumper sticker thought that I think is important, because when you're preaching to the choir, when you're talking to the congregation, you can talk in language that sounds significant and sounds like you're talking about truth and sounds like you're being profound, but are actually, in my view, deepities. Deepity is a term coined by Dan Dennett's daughter, actually, I think, where to the extent that the claim is true, it is trivial. And to the extent that it is profound, it is in fact false. And so to say spirituality is for those of us who've been there, is to say, hey, I've experienced something. I can't possibly show it to you, but you just have to trust that my interpretation of that experience is correct. And that's just not the way that evidence and reason works.
Yeah, I agree. You ready for another one?
I don't have any choice but to be ready.
Yeah, you're right. I'm in charge. So ha, sucker. All right, we're going to talk to Luke. Hi, Luke. You're on the Atheist Experience. What would you like to talk about today?
Awesome. Actually, I wanted to start off with Matt real quick. I'm actually an 18-year-old. I used to listen to Matt all the time. I grew up in a very religious family. I actually used to show my mom, my dad, Atheist Experience videos. I believe that religion is a very powerful weapon. It manipulates emotions such as fear and guilt. Fear because people are individualized to their own identity, and they fear what's going to happen after death because they're so individualized. And guilt because it keeps them in a community that they're constricted to be in. So I understand the power of religion more than anything. But I believe that science can be significantly manipulated. I believe that we all came from the same origin and that we would be coexisting with nature in an incredibly peaceful way. I believe there wouldn't be racism or any of these concepts that exist if it wasn't for a system that has continued to project it. I believe that nature has been manipulated in every way through society, and I believe I have a lot of evidence to back that up.
So I'm not sure I'm following what you're
Thank you,
attempting
because
to.
I genuinely have no idea what your point is. Science.
My point is that
hang on. Science is a methodology, and when it's when the methodology is used, or the methodologies are used correctly, there's nothing to be manipulated. The findings of science and the reportings of people can certainly be manipulated, and some of them can be used to bolster ideas of racism. But I don't think you needed science or scientific finding to have something like racism. All you needed was the xenophobic nature of humans generally, that we fear the unknown, we fear that which is different. It didn't take science to start drawing lines to say, hey, here's my in group and here's my out group. So I don't know.
So you don't believe that racism is projected at all from an external system? You don't believe that people would just be connected if there wasn't ideologies that constrict us? I mean, a religious person, an atheist person argues because they both have been brought up in different forms of socialization.
No, sir.
Nature,
no, sir.
naturally,
I was not brought up as an atheist. You cannot do this. Theists and atheists were both brought up that way.
You were brought up
That's
in a religion.
literally what you just said.
I have. You were brought up in Christianity specifically, and I understand that because I watched your show a lot, like I said. And you saw how horrible it was. You saw the control it had over people. You saw identity.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Luke, but that's not the case. I did not see how horrible it was clearly until I was already out. What I saw that got me out was that it didn't have evidence for its positions.
Yeah, same for me.
People in categorizations. So I want to bring up something else. So
I'm not sure you're listening to anything we say. You seem to just be waiting for your turn to spew stuff again. When you suggested that I think there would be racism, even if, are you suggesting, just so I'm clear, that there wouldn't be racism if there weren't science?
Fuels the 99%. There's always been this 1% that's controlled the 99%. People have all these. You have the Republicans, you have liberals, you have Democrats.
Are you answering my question? Are you answering my question?
I don't believe there'd be racism if you're naturally in nature. I don't believe there'd be racism if it wasn't projected onto young children at a young age.
So you don't think that tribes in ancient times came across other people who were different from them and that they were naturally wary? You don't think that that was a natural thing?
No. I think that.
Okay, well, you are now in conflict with everything that I understand about sociological evaluations of the past, but I'm not an expert. So now we're at a spot where you think that this has to be taught. And I have no idea whether it needs to be taught or not. But of the two that we're comparing here, science and religion, which one do you think has contributed more to xenophobia and racism? Religions, which almost all of them make in-group, out-group comparisons, or science, which doesn't make evaluations of people?
I think science has been manipulated. Again, can I bring up another point and go back to that, though? I wasn't really able to.
Could you answer my question? Could you answer my question?
Yeah, let's stay on this one for a sec, Luke.
I think religion throughout generations has controlled people. I think it's always kept people in their categories. I think
that's not what I asked. Luke, you're not listening. Luke, you're not listening. I'll ask the question again. Which do you think has contributed more to xenophobic views and racism, religion or science?
Religion. I already said that, though.
Okay. In what ways do you think science has contributed to xenophobia and racism?
I think that science the science is something that just got brought up in society now. I mean, atheism and science has just gotten developed in the last 100 years. Before that happened.
Stop. So first of all, atheism and science did not just begin 100 years ago. You need to go study history. Atheists, by the way, is what the ancient Greeks called Christians. But the notion of disbelief has been around for ages. And science is way older than 100 years, including the modern methods of science. And so I don't mean to disparage you in any way, Luke, but
I'm saying when it was brought in as a norm. That's what I meant. I'm sorry. I just want to rephrase that. As more of a norm.
As a norm, that means nothing to me. Shannon, I don't know.
So, Luke, I think it seems like you're saying that it's more prevalent in society now or accessible publicly. Is that okay?
It's transpired and being more of a norm now than before. Yes.
Okay, I don't think that translates to it being the cause of racism.
Does he not think racism existed 1,000 years ago?
Taking one topic, you're not allowing me. You don't understand what I'm trying to say. I'm saying society.
Because you're so fucking wrong on one topic and you're not listening that we can't move on to the next one. I'm happy to move on to I'll move on to another topic if you answer me this. Do you think that racism existed 2,000 years ago?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. And if science is new, your argument blaming science for it is clearly flawed by your own admission.
No, I'm not blaming
What
science.
other topic would you like?
Yeah, we have just a little bit more time before we have to take at least one more call before we're done, Luke.
So 22 million children on psychiatric medications. What causes depression in society? Fast food.
Okay, I'm gonna tag in for a sec, Luke.
Yeah, go ahead. I got nothing.
I'm gonna tag in on this, Luke. So depression has myriad causes. If you're gonna say that some sort of psychotropic medications are overprescribed, you and I are probably going to be on the same page there, because I think that there are many instances in which they are overprescribed. But that doesn't mean that there aren't many instances where they are just desperately needed as well as part of a comprehensive health. The best way to approach it, I think, is it seems as though you maybe are really kind of going down some rabbit holes that you're very, very excited about, and maybe drawing some multiple connections where maybe connections aren't there. So are you
I don't think that's true.
Okay.
One
so are you
that doesn't have long-lasting negative effects from the original mental health condition? One psychiatric medication, I'd be happy to hear. Does antidepressants help long-term? No. Do amphetamines given to 3-year-old children help long-term? No.
Okay, Luke, once this is a really important subject, and I don't want any misinformation to go out. So if you're asking for which medication it is beneficial long-term, I would argue that people who have schizophrenia that need to take antipsychotic drugs in order to maintain stasis would be probably a good example. People who have chronic depression may need to be on it long term, but ultimately the goal, if you're having comprehensive healthcare, is that the drugs themselves may not be needed long term, because as part of comprehensive healthcare, you're also going to have a mental health professional that can guide you through therapeutic processes like some forms of cognitive behavioral therapy and other behavior augmentation therapies that can kind of retrain and rewire your brain so that those chemical deficiencies can no longer be present. That's not the medical model that's accepted. The medical model that's accepted and pushed by anybody who's worth their salt is one that is a comprehensive physiological, mental, and possibly medication inclusive mental health model.
I have questions.
Okay, so I had a friend. He was put on psychiatric medication, and it was horrible. It had a completely adverse effect on him. He tried to take it one time.
Probably the wrong medication for him, and he probably should have been taken off of it if his doctor was monitoring him appropriately. So if your argument is that means that any psychotropic medications or any neuropharmacological agents are thus unilaterally bad, it doesn't follow from that.
Yeah.
What I would agree with you on is that we need to have better and more comprehensive mental health models and better understanding of them, and better public education.
Psychedelics are Schedule 1. Psychedelics are literally notarized worse.
Luke, stop. Luke, I have genuine questions, and I would love to know what the fuck your point is, because this isn't the big pharma medication experience. So let's try and answer these really briefly. Do the drugs that have been prescribed to people for various mental health issues help some people?
No, absolutely.
Well,
not.
now you're just full of shit, and we don't have to.
Luke,
No.
Luke.
You're completely full of shit.
Luke, I'm gonna let you
you're
go.
denying that the drugs help anybody, which is demonstrably false, even with just the two of us sitting here.
Okay, Luke, I'm going to let you go because we're flying kind of off the rails in this conversation, and I appreciate you calling to have the conversation. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
I'm confused.
He's
I understand if somebody wants to say, I think drugs are
quite young.
overprescribed. It's what?
He's quite young, and
I hate
he's
that.
very excited.
I hate no. I don't like.
You don't know what
like,
I was about to say, though. What do you hate? What do you hate? What did you
his
assume
age is
I was
irrelevant.
when it comes to acquiring knowledge bases, I don't think that it necessarily is.
It is dismissive. There are plenty of 18-year-olds who may well know a lot about this, and may well know more than either of us. Maybe not more than you, but the age isn't the relevant part. I don't want to have somebody be like, oh, I was 18 and I called in and they dismissed me just because I was young.
No, that's fair. That's a valid point. That's not what I was attempting to say, I don't think. But I was going to say that, he's quite young and is very excited about this topic. And so, like, sometimes within that age group, when you're exploring things, you can become very, very invested.
Yeah. The tone and the eagerness about it, though, it made me feel like he thinks we're sitting here pushing depression meds, which has nothing to do with the show. I don't give medical advice.
Me either, because neither of us are clinicians. All right. Well, we have time for one more, probably. I think for sure. Are you good for another one, Matt?
I am.
Since I just committed us to it, let's talk to Victor. Hi, Victor. You're on the Atheist Experience. What would you like to talk about today?
Hi. Thank you for taking me at the end of the show.
Yeah, we gotcha.
I am, a very weak theist. I don't count myself as a Christian. I don't buy into the Bible. I don't claim any of that kind of stuff. And I don't claim. I don't accept, like the Kalam. I don't accept this idea that God is more likely than a multiverse. But what I really have an issue with, and I guess let me first state my issue, and then I need to give a little bit of explanation of my concept of God.
Sure.
Is that I believe that the evidence, and I only count it as evidence. I don't create a syllogism for it. Effectively, only one premise is our sense of morality, and it's not that God commands us to be moral, but that my best estimate is that God, having created us in some way that I'm not really sure, is concerned for us. And because of God's concern for us, he wants us to be concerned about the rest of his creation. Let me, if I could expand upon my notion of God briefly.
Sure.
Hello?
I got loads of questions already, but one of them is, what are the features of your God? So let's do it.
Yeah, well, yeah, because like I said, I don't claim to be a Christian. I don't buy into the biblical God. I actually consider the Bible to be a lot of crazy stuff and kind of abominable.
Just get to the features of your God, because we're running low on time.
Yeah. The God is that I believe in is not omnipotent, not perhaps omnibenevolent, but probably merely benevolent is my claim. And the God did not create everything. I believe that there is a greater creation, that God is somehow came out from this greater, what I consider indifferent creation. But whatever the case, and this God, I agree with you, Matt, about the concept of well-being as the basis for morality. And this same God is actually subject to that basis. So it's not a matter of divine command theory. It's a matter of God.
Okay, Victor, I think I'm going to stop you there just because there was already a significant amount of content. I'll give Matt a sec, but my first question would be did you just construct this God yourself intuitively based on the types of things that you want to believe based on observation? Like, is this a whole cloth idea that you created yourself?
It's my observation of things, and like the one thing that I cannot quite get around is the full extent to which we actually care about others. I realize that, in most cases, for almost all humans, it matters.
Right.
But particularly, like, to consider, I know something that Matt, you would have said a number of times, is you would be willing to take Jesus's suffering, all of the torture, killing on the cross, and be dead after that forever, and get nothing out of it if it would be, to end suffering in the world. And I don't see how anyone can, how that kind of altruism can come from merely it being in your best interest in the end.
Okay, I have a lot.
Yeah, go.
So first of all, when you say I don't see how, that is an argument from ignorance or argument from personal incredulity fallacy. Whether or not you can see how, to get to altruism is irrelevant. But you agreed that well-being is the foundation of morality. And if well-being is the foundation of morality, then a God becomes completely irrelevant. You can't make a moral argument because God isn't required. All that's required are the facts about well-being, and those are the same whether or not there's a God or whether or not a God cares about us. So then we have to go to the features of your God. And so just to make this as easy as possible, how do you know that God is not omnipotent?
Problem of evil. I mean, if there were, well, no, the God that I'm referring to is not. There is, because this God is benevolent, and
you're okay, Victor. You are not answering my question. I have here a list of your features of God. God is not omnipotent.
Okay.
God is perhaps omnibenevolent, but at least benevolent. God didn't create everything. God came out of a different creation. Those are the 5 points that you gave as features for your God. So I'm asking you, point one, you say God is not omnipotent. How do you know that?
Right. There's just too much chaos and everything. And I mean, I suppose there's a chance that there's a higher God who is omnipotent and completely doesn't care about anything,
Victor,
with respect to us. What?
Victor, I'm sorry, but when I ask you, how do you know that God is not omnipotent? Saying there's too much chaos in everything is not a response. What does chaos in something have to do with whether or not there is an omnipotent God? And how silly is it to say, I don't think that God is omnipotent, but maybe there's a super God that is? I mean, I don't want to just be insulting, but if you're going to list off the properties of your God, you've got to actually be able to defend those. So let's skip how you know God is not omnipotent, because the correct answer is you don't know that. So how do you know that there's a God that is at least benevolent?
Like I said, that there is benevolence in the universe is one thing.
No, there's not. What benevolence is there in the universe that you could attribute to a God?
Well, like I said, that we care for one another.
I get credit for being benevolent. No. Victor, stop. You do not get to look at me and Shannon and say, you two are benevolent, therefore there's a benevolent God. That's bullshit. I want to know how you know there's a God that is benevolent.
Well, there are good things that in the universe, like, there's a lot of beauty in the universe, despite the fact that there's also
beauty isn't benevolent. Beauty isn't benevolent, and you haven't demonstrated that beauty comes from God. Plus, you just said that one of your things is that God didn't create everything, so you don't get to look at the fucking things in the universe and give God credit for them. Your theology is so absolutely confused. You are just absolutely pulling shit out of thin air with no logical basis for any of it. You don't know whether or not there is a God. You don't know whether or not that God is omnipotent. You don't know whether or not that God is benevolent. The truth is, you look around the universe and you see things, and you want to attribute those things to God. But then when push comes to shove, you know that you don't have a defense of God, which is why you're going to say, maybe our God isn't the super God. Maybe there's another God. And well-being is the foundation of morality, but I think we need a God for that. You are all over the place, and nothing you're saying is rational, supported by evidence. It is all, here's my gut feels on what I think a God is.
Yeah, I'm just gonna chime in for 1 second because Matt kind of mirrored what I was gonna say. Because that what I'm gleaning from the conversation is that you've realized that all of like the texts and religions that you've been exposed to don't make sense, but you still have this inclination to lean on God to explain things that you can't readily understand, like this sort of latent urge to say, like, if something seems mysterious or unexplainable to me, then I'm going to try to tie that to a God for some reason. And that's why it's kind of coming off as a little bit, kind of like disorganized.
Yeah. I wanted to get to just one thing. Like, how do you know that God's benevolent? And your answer was, well, there appear to be good things in the universe that are good. But you already said that God didn't create this. How do you know that God didn't create this?
I didn't say that God didn't create the whole universe. I'm not really sure that if there is
then can you tell me
beyond God is
what
beyond the universe.
what pick something in the universe, pick anything in the universe that you are convinced is from a God, and tell me why.
I like that question.
Well, the only thing, and I'm not even sure I'd use the word convinced, but the main thing is, like I said, is our sense of morality.
But okay,
and
so
again,
here's the thing, Victor.
Comes from,
Victor, when you say our sense of morality, do you and I agree on morality?
Probably not entirely, but to a large extent, from what I've
then we don't really have a sense of morality between us. And so let's pick something we agree on, like it's wrong to murder someone.
Okay, I agree.
Cool. Why is it wrong?
Yeah, that one is easy. I mean, that one does not need a God because it's bad for society. It's wrong to be murdered. Then I might get killed myself, and I prefer that.
But Victor, what I want to bring your awareness to right now, though, like I just want to bring this while we're in this moment, I want to bring your awareness to the fact that you said, well, not that one. So anything, it seems as though, like I said before, you're utilizing God when things become ambiguous or difficult to explain.
So you say the moral prescription on murder doesn't require God. Cool.
Right.
So now you're admitting that there are parts of morality that don't require God. So the next question becomes, what part of morality does require a God?
And then I'm going to guess that it's when it becomes a little bit more gray.
Your willingness. I gave the example of your willingness to undergo extreme suffering and die and be forever and get no benefit from it, so that the rest of the world can end suffering.
Why does that require a God? And how do you demonstrate that position is morally correct?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, the demonstration I don't think is something that I can actually demonstrate because, like I said, I think it's the moral sense. But the point is,
but we don't have the same moral sense. We don't have the same moral sense. And so it's funny that in an area where you and I agree on morality, you're like, yep, no God required there. And I'm just wondering if the only places where we disagree are things where you think a God's required. For example, are trans women women?
I would say probably. I'm not
okay. I guess that is a position that's not necessarily moral. Is it morally permissible for people? Hang on. Is it morally permissible for people of the same gender to get married?
For morally, I'm fine with that.
Sure. And is there a God required to reach that conclusion?
No.
Okay. So then where are we at? Is abortion morally permissible?
That's a little harder to deal with because, yeah, I do think in terms of, are we maybe possibly killing an unborn? But I mainly fall on that the imposition is too great on women, which is why, for the most part, I'm pro-choice.
So where is there a moral thing that you think requires a God? Because my altruism, you haven't even demonstrated is moral or that it would happen. The point here is that you called in essentially to argue on behalf of a God because of our sense of morality. And then it turns out we don't have a shared sense of morality that is completely shared. But to the extent that we share them, whenever we come up with examples, you don't think those require God. And I can tell you that for example, fundamentalist Christians who are opposed to trans rights and gay marriage and abortion, they think that God is responsible and the foundation for those moral views. And so you and I are in agreement that no God is required. And yet you're calling in to argue for a non-omnipotent God that's probably benevolent, that didn't create everything, that came out of some other creation. So now you've got a multi-layer problem here, and who is kind of responsible for some moral views, but isn't the foundation of morality. I like genuinely, none of this makes any sense. It argues against itself.
Yeah, and I agree with Matt, and I have one question for you before we let you go. Can you give me one thing that you think of as a moral fact that you can't provide actual like cognitive reasons for, like that you can't think your way to the reason why and justify why it's a moral fact? Because then maybe you could demonstrate that we need a God. But I've never encountered something that somebody stated was moral or otherwise that wasn't then supported by sufficient or sometimes insufficient reasons.
Well, I don't claim any moral facts. But we have.
Where are we at here then?
I think all of that.
So you're saying then. So what you're saying then is anything that you propose that you would propose as moral, you can use your words and your reason to support why you think it's moral.
And I have an answer, but I'll go.
Well,
right.
First of all, like I said, I don't dispute with you on moral facts. I dispute with you on the way, because our sense of morality, and again, since it comes from a God who is not omnipotent,
it doesn't come from a God.
Our sense of selfishness. That's my proposition, what I'm saying.
Okay, stop. I have an answer to this, which will hopefully end all your confusion, because you seem to think that the only thing you could come up with really that was a moral issue that you thought required God was my altruism or my expression of altruism. But here's the thing. I've already pointed out how you can get from pure selfishness to that altruistic position. And this is incredibly simple because me willing to make the world better benefits more than just me. And if we lived in a world where the question to ask is, what would the world be like if everyone was willing to do certain things and if everyone held certain views? And if everybody in the world held my view that they would be willing to die if it meant everybody else stopped suffering, means that now we have a world that is entirely populated with people who are willing to take steps to stop suffering, which means my death will probably become unnecessary because we're actually working cooperatively. In a world with people who are willing to sacrifice, who are willing to put the welfare of their family members ahead of themselves, the welfare of their loved ones, their neighbors, and the entire world ahead of themselves, is a world where people are, in fact, actually working cooperatively, rather than a world where I'm just out for me and consequences be damned. But even in a purely selfish sense, if I want a better world for me, it's in my best interest to play along cooperatively with the other people on the planet and to do things for them, even if there's not an immediate apparent benefit to me, because I will do better in society if society views me as a decent person willing to sacrifice for them. And that's all you need to justify that sort of altruistic position. You don't need a God.
But you would be dead if. Yeah, I mean,
I would be dead,
it's
and
cheaper
I would
for everybody
be
that had it.
dead. I would be dead, and the world and the other people that I care about and I value would be better off, assuming we could, in this magic scenario. Meanwhile, in the interim, my expression of willingness to do that benefits me every day because I look less selfish and less horrible than the religious individuals out there who are trying to dictate what people can do with their lives and in their bedroom. I care more about the real issues of reality than the religious people do. There is nothing that you can say where doing the right thing doesn't actually benefit someone. The notion of altruism is true altruism is, I think, false. All we have are actions where someone has considered that the world will be better off if they take this action. And if you were to convince me that you could put an end to hunger, and you could prove it conclusively, and the end to hunger was conditioned upon my death, then of course I would do it. If for no other reason, and I hadn't even really thought about this, I think in one example I did mention, even if there was no clear upside for me, but you don't think I'm not going to enter into the history books as the person who ended suffering?
I guess that has a value to it, but
I guess so. And if in fact the rest of my family, and if in fact the rest of my family benefits, why isn't that enough?
I still have a hard time buying into the idea of the rest of my family if I'm dead and have no knowledge of it.
You have the knowledge beforehand.
Yeah, he's not going to arbitrarily sacrifice himself without any guarantees.
Yeah, it is conditioned upon a guarantee that these are the consequences of this action, which is why it's really easy to say because it's incredibly unlikely. It's a fantasy scenario. Nobody's ever going to come and say, you know what? If you die, Matt,
exactly,
nobody in the world will ever hunger again. It is nothing but a thought experiment. Right. But do I do things for other people that nobody knows about? Yeah, I've done lots of things where I'm the only one who knows what beneficial thing I've done for somebody else. So what did I get out of it? The good feeling of helping somebody else because I share a world with them. Right. And as their life improves, my life improves. No God required.
Yeah, well, to me, it seems like it's just a good feeling.
What's wrong with good feelings?
I'm not disputing that you should do it. Because I don't see where the good feeling comes from.
The good where do all feelings come from? Shannon?
Well, yeah, the brain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any reason to think? Right. If I do something and I feel good,
yeah.
Why on earth would you take me doing something and feeling good and attribute that to a God that you don't seem to know anything about?
Yeah. Again, it all comes down to I really do. It does sound to me like you're just trying to whole cloth construct a God to explain things that seem difficult to initially grasp intuitively.
But we're like almost 20 minutes past time.
I know, and I have a dog that has just come in here to bark in my face.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
So call us back another time.
Okay.
Call us back another time and have a better defense of the properties that you're advocating, because I can't prove you wrong. As far as I can tell, you've got an unfalsifiable proposition, but I don't see any reason to think that you're remotely correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Victor. Have a good day. Bye.
Shannon, when we do this show, you and I get the weirdest calls.
I know.
Not that one. I'm not.
That one was good. I was thinking back.
It's just funny, and I get it. I have a reputation, and unfortunately, you and some others are going to suffer from misunderstandings of that reputation. Although I sat back and watched you dig in on somebody today thoroughly, and yet I still got called the asshole for it in chat, and I'm okay with that. For the people who have theistic beliefs, we're always looking for theists to call in to present why they believe, even if it's just bizarre. And we will tell you it's bizarre, and we will try to move on to others who maybe don't have as bizarre a view. If you're like, hey, I think there's a God because God is the best explanation for X. Awesome. Make that case. Tell me what X is and how you can draw a strong evidence-based connective argument between X existing and God being the necessary foundation for it, or the obvious sound foundation for it. But if you're going to call in and say, hey, I just can't imagine there not being a God, that's cool. I genuinely, and I'm not saying I'm genuinely have some understanding of what you're saying. And I suspect that Shannon and others might too, because at some point in my past, I genuinely could not imagine a world without a God. Atheism seemed absurd to me in some way, because how do you explain morality? How do you explain existence? How do you explain, life and diversity and all these other things? And I struggled with those things for a long time. And then I realized that even if I didn't have an explanation for those things, it doesn't mean that the explanation I was accepting, that a God did it, was the right one. That claim needs its own evidential support. That's what we're looking for. Make the case, make it as strong as you can. But if you're just going to say, hey, I just can't imagine it being any other way, cool, we'll move on to the next caller. And perhaps a little quicker than we did on a couple things, but I had so much fun with this.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a roller coaster ride for sure. There was some good conversations in there, and there was some other conversations that we had.
See, Shannon's being all diplomatic now. Other conversations, yes. There were some brilliant callers and some other callers.
And then we had some other callers. Today I did learn that babies drown in water, though, so that's good.
Yeah, so be careful when you're handling that water. You don't want to accidentally drown a baby while you're getting a drink.
Right, exactly, because the water's what does it. Anyway, that's good day. Good day. And
on
Bella
that
says
note,
hi.
a huge thank you to our crew. Throw yourselves up on the screen. As always, we love doing it. Thanks so much for everybody who tuned in and is watching live. There are thousands of people out there. Please spread the news. And if you think that you have someone in your family or in your church who can do a better job of defending theism or theistic claims than callers, or that we're completely wrong about something, you could call in and make that case. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Please take care of yourself. I know as we start coming out of pandemic-y type things, I'm loving getting back to being able to interact with people. I don't have any other news on possibly a live gathering with us, but as soon as we do, you'll see it here. In the meantime, take care of yourself. Keep tuning into ACA content, and we'll see you next week.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.